There's one rule in hip-hop that's supposed to matter more than any other: don't talk. But put a man in a cell looking at 50 years, and that rule turns into a choice real quick. Some of these artists made that choice on camera. So today, we're breaking down the rappers who flipped on their own to save themselves, and what it actually cost them once the block found out. 6ix9ine. You'd expect a dude who built his whole entire brand on being affiliated with a real, violent Bloods, said to be the last person on earth willing to stand up in federal court and explain how that gang actually worked. Nah, not 6ix9ine. He didn't even wait a week. Daniel Hernandez, rainbow hair, face tattoos, loud as a car alarm, blew up in 2017 and 2018 off a persona built entirely around his claimed membership in the 9 Trey Gangsta Bloods, a real set that started on Rikers Island. That affiliation was everywhere: his videos, his Instagram, his interviews, and it helped carry him to real commercial success, including the multi-platinum smash Fefe with Nicki Minaj, which hit number 3 on the pop charts. Man had the whole internet's attention. In November 2018, federal prosecutors scooped up Hernandez, along with several alleged 9 Trey members, on racketeering, weapons, and conspiracy to commit murder charges. By his own account, he decided to cooperate the very next day, pleaded guilty to 9 felonies in February 2019, then took the stand that September for 3 straight days, testifying against 2 alleged high-ranking 9 Trey members. When prosecutors asked him what his actual job in the gang had been, he told the jury it was to just keep making hits and be the financial support for the gang so they could buy guns and stuff like that. And when they asked what he got out of the arrangement, he said it plain: my career. I got the street credibility, the videos, the music, the protection, all of the above. Bro basically read the receipts out loud in open court. His testimony helped convict both men on trial, and prosecutors later wrote the judge a letter crediting Hernandez with giving them critical insight into the structure and organization of 9 Trey, and pointed out he testified even while facing real threats to himself and his family. That cooperation got him a lighter sentence, but the backlash in hip-hop was instant, and it has never really let up, with Snoop Dogg among the first to publicly call him out. Hernandez has always said he did it to protect himself and his family, not because he had some big loyalty crisis, just simple math against a 47-year mandatory minimum. Either way, Tekashi Snitched 9ine is a name that's going to be attached to him forever, earned in the same courtroom that had, by his own admission, built his whole career in the first place. 6ix9ine's case is the cleanest one on this list. He said it himself, under oath, no wiggle room. This next case is murkier, and it's tangled up in one of the most heartbreaking losses hip-hop has had in years, which is probably why the rumors around it never really go away. Lil Durk. You'd assume the guy who was standing right there the night King Von got killed, who built OTF with Von from the ground up, would be the last name anybody would whisper snitch next to, but the internet has whispered it for years, and it's never fully quieted down. Dirk Banks and Davon Bennett, better known as King Von, came up together in Chicago before relocating to Atlanta, chasing music careers away from the streets that raised them. They built OTF together, and Von's death outside an Atlanta hookah lounge in November 2020 hit Dirk hard enough that he paid tribute to him almost immediately with the song The Voice. That closeness is exactly why the rumors that followed cut as deep as they did. The claim, pushed publicly by figures like Charleston White and repeated across social media for years, is that Dirk cooperated with police in some way connected to Von's death or the events surrounding it, and that his cooperation somehow contributed to what happened. There's a real complication here worth being straight about. When court documents from a separate 2019 arrest involving both Dirk and Von were released, they actually showed the opposite of the rumor, that Dirk refused to cooperate with investigators and said nothing beyond asking for his lawyer. Despite that, the whispers never fully died down, especially once Dirk was later federally indicted in 2024 on charges alleging he orchestrated a retaliatory murder for hire plot against Quando Rondo over Von's death, a case that's still working through the courts. During that same saga, a different snitching rumor swirled, this time suggesting an OTF associate named Jam had been the one cooperating against Dirk, not the other way around, which honestly just tells you how tangled and rumor-heavy this entire saga has gotten from every direction. So Dirk's case is less about a confirmed courtroom admission and more about a rumor that's followed him through one of the worst losses of his life, one that the actual paperwork available so far doesn't back up. Still, in this culture, a rumor with enough legs doesn't need a court ruling to stick around, and this one has been sticking around for years now. Dirk's situation is a rumor wrapped around real grief. This next one has no grief in it at all, just cold business, caught on camera, and leaked straight into the group chat. Gunna. You'd think an artist sitting at the absolute peak of his run, fresh off a #1 album with hits alongside Drake and Future, would have enough juice to avoid ever having to choose between his own freedom and his label. Turns out a RICO indictment doesn't care how many plaques you got on the wall. In early 2022, Gunna's album DS4 ever debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200, moving 150,000 units in its first week. He was one of the most reliable hitmakers to come out of Atlanta's melodic trap scene, tight with Young Thug and signed to Thug's label YSL. That May, Gunna, real name Sergio Kitchens, got swept up in a massive racketeering indictment alongside Thug and more than 24 others, with prosecutors alleging YSL was running as an actual criminal street gang. He sat in Fulton County jail for months, with his bond denied over and over. In December 2022, Gunna took what's called an Alford plea, pleading guilty to one racketeering count while officially maintaining his innocence, a legal move that lets you accept the consequences without admitting to the facts. Footage of that plea hearing later leaked online, and it shows Gunna telling prosecutors on the record that YSL must end. Within days, the reaction across hip-hop was brutal. Lil Durk, Lil Baby, and other former collaborators publicly cut ties with him. A charity event Gunna had planned, giving away $100,000 in gift cards, got canceled days after his release over security concerns. His attorney fought the snitch label hard, insisting Gunna never made statements against any co-defendant and never agreed to testify against anyone, and Gunna has kept that same story in interviews ever since. Whether that plea actually counts as snitching, since he never stood up and pointed at a single person by name, is something fans are still arguing about to this day. But the internet made up its mind the second that courtroom footage got out, and in this culture, that perception hits just as hard as any legal reality would. His next album still moved a respectable 83,000 copies in his first week, but that's a real step down from what he was doing a year earlier, and his old circle has barely worked with him since. Gunna never stood up and named a name in open court, which is exactly why his case still gets argued about. Young Thug. You'd figure the man who ran YSL, who Gunna supposedly snitched to protect himself from, would be the last person anybody could ever pin a cooperation label on. For a while, that's exactly how it played out. Thug was the one throwing shots, not catching them. Jeffrey Williams, known as Young Thug, walked out of custody in late 2024 after pleading guilty in what became the longest-running criminal trial in Georgia's history, the YSL RICO case that also swept up Gunna. Once he was out, Thug spent months publicly going after Gunna over that Alford plea, including leaked jail calls, where he ripped into him for telling prosecutors YSL was a gang. He said YSL is a gang and he know people in this trial who committed crimes in furtherance of the gang. Thug reportedly said on one call, "That's a lie. That's a full-blown lie." Thug was playing judge on everybody else's loyalty. Then, in August 2025, an old interrogation video from 2015 resurfaced online, nearly 2 hours long, showing Thug being questioned by detectives about a Lil Wayne tour bus shooting tied to the RICO case. Fans zeroed in on one specific moment where Thug appears to tell detectives that a co-defendant named Pee Wee Roscoe sold Wayne weed. That clip alone was enough to flip the entire narrative, with people accusing Thug of doing the exact thing he just spent months dragging Gunna for. Pee Wee Roscoe himself pushed back hard, calling Thug clean as Listerine in a video response, and explaining that the comment was the kind of vague, non-committal thing you say under police pressure, not real cooperation with prosecutors. Thug denied the whole thing outright on social media, posting legal motions, and insisting detectives lied about statements he supposedly made, tweeting, "Stop trying to make me one of those boys," in response to the pile on. Nothing here has been proven the way 6ix9ine's case was, and Thug maintains hard that he never actually gave anybody up. But the optics were brutal. A guy who built his whole credibility on calling out other people's cooperation, getting hit with a nearly identical accusation off his own leaked footage. He even released a diss track called Closing Arguments, specifically to shut the rumors down, rapping that there's a big difference between me and y'all, insisting he never pointed anyone out for a crime they didn't commit. Whether that clears his name for good or just adds another verse to the ongoing YSL soap opera is still playing out in real time. Thug's situation is still fresh and still messy. This next one is older, but it's got two of the South's biggest names throwing the accusation back and forth at each other, one blaming the other for a dead relative's case, and neither side ever fully backing down. T.I. and Boosie. You'd think two Southern legends who'd been cool for years, who even had an entire joint album in the works together, would keep that kind of accusation far away from each other. Instead, T.I. and Boosie Badazz spent part of 2023 publicly calling each other rats, live on Instagram and on stage, over something that happened years before either of them was arguing about it. The beef started when Boosie scrapped his long-awaited collaborative album with T.I., telling Vlad TV he'd pulled the plug after learning T.I. had allegedly snitched on his late cousin, Toot, in order to dodge a gun charge years earlier. T.I. fired back hard, showing up at Atlanta's Trap City Cafe, holding rolled up documents on camera, claiming he had paperwork, proving he never cooperated with anybody. "I don't spare no body," T.I. said, "because if you do anything wrong and you cooperate with law enforcement to get you out of trouble, that means you're a rat." He challenged Boosie directly to show up and see the paperwork for himself. Here's where it gets messier. T.I. later admitted in a separate interview that his own version of events had been embellished, walking back some of what he'd claimed about the situation with his late partner. And Boosie, years later in 2024, faced his own round of the exact same accusation after his federal gun case out of San Diego got dismissed, and people online immediately assumed he must have cooperated to walk free. Boozy laughed the claim off in an interview with Vlad TV, pointing out there wasn't even anybody left for him to snitch on. 4 people got caught, I'm the only one that got charged, he said. Who the f him a tell on? That shit crazy. Nobody involved in this one has court paperwork backing up the original claim the way Alfamega or 6ix9ine's cases do. It's mostly accusations, denials, and a scrapped album. 2 of the South's biggest names publicly trading the worst possible label hip-hop has, with neither side ever producing anything that actually settles it for good, which might be the most accurate summary of how this whole culture handles the accusation in general. The rumor alone is often punishment enough. The T.I. and Boozy situation never got any closer to a real answer than accusations flying back and forth. This next one has zero ambiguity attached to it. Straight federal court records with a real name, a real sentence, and a real 18-month discount for information he handed over. Alfamega. You'd assume a guy who literally calls himself the Grand Hustle Muscle and built his whole image around being T.I.'s enforcer would keep as much distance from law enforcement as humanly possible. Alfamega had the opposite problem. He'd already been working with them for years before anybody in Atlanta rap even knew his name. Cedric Zellers, who performed as Alfamega, signed to T.I.'s Grand Hustle Records and built a reputation as one of the label's most physically imposing, most street credible artists, a 6'4" presence who was scheduled to drop his debut album, I Am Alfamega, through Capitol Records. His whole persona ran on the idea that he was straight from his own mouth, a real hood. In May 2009, the website The Smoking Gun published federal court documents telling a completely different story. According to the records, Zellers got sentenced in September 1995 to 110 months in a federal gun case after selling weapons to an undercover agent. Instead of writing out the full sentence, court filings show he agreed to cooperate with authorities and was debriefed about people he knew, specifically handing over information on the drug trafficking of a man named Ali Bakar. Zellers sat down with a DEA agent and a federal prosecutor, then testified at trial. Bakar got convicted of conspiracy to distribute heroin based in part on Zellers' testimony. In return, a federal judge knocked 18 months off Zellers' sentence in 1997, citing his substantial assistance to the government. No mystery here, no rumor, just a judge's signature on paper. The fallout was immediate once those documents got out. T.I., who'd personally done a year and a day in prison after one of his own bodyguards cooperated with the feds, dropped Zellers from Grand Hustle on the spot, cutting him loose in a written letter. Zellers fired back with a diss track and accused the Smoking Gun of forging the whole thing, a claim the site shut down hard, publishing another 25 pages of records just to make the point again. His major label deal never happened after that. His whole tough guy image, gone, dismantled by paperwork nobody could argue with. Alfamega's case is locked in stone, decades-old court records that don't leave room for debate. This last one is a lot murkier, an accusation that's never actually been proven in any courtroom, but it's followed one of Houston's most respected legends for close to 20 years now, and it's never gone away. Scarface. You'd figure a founding member of the Ghetto Boys, one of the guys most responsible for putting Houston on the rap map, would be about the last person anybody in that city would ever accuse of working with police. Scarface spent years fighting off exactly that accusation from a fellow Houston rapper who swore he had the paperwork to prove it. Brad Jordan, performing as Scarface, spent decades building a reputation as one of the most respected, most credible voices to ever come out of Houston, both solo and as part of the Ghetto Boys. Man even recorded a song called We Don't Talk to Police, publicly nailing his colors to the mast on hip-hop's whole code against cooperating, which made the accusation that eventually landed on him hit that much harder. In 2005, Houston rapper Lil Troy, who'd been beefing with Jordan for years over money and old lawsuits, released a DVD called Paperwork, built around what Troy claimed was a 4-page federal affidavit, proving that Scarface, referred to in the document by his government name Brad Jordan, had introduced 2 men, Byron Keith Harris and George Washington Simmons, to undercover agents as his cocaine supplier, leading to both of their convictions. Troy went hard in interviews about it, telling all hip-hop straight up, I got you on a 4-page affidavit. I ain't just call you no name. This is what the government said you did. Scarface has denied the whole thing, and one of the 2 men actually named in those documents, George Washington Simmons, later sent a letter from prison saying Jordan had nothing to do with his conviction, insisting it was actually his own cousin's decision to deal directly with an undercover agent that got them both caught. Nearly 20 years later, none of it has ever been fully settled either way. No criminal charge tied to Scarface over it, no court ruling that says what actually happened. The whole thing resting on one document a rival rapper put out during a bitter personal feud, next to a denial from one of the very men supposedly harmed by it. What's clear is the accusation stuck anyway, riding alongside Jordan through interview after interview for years. Proof that in this culture, a well-timed piece of paperwork can wreck a reputation permanently, whether a judge ever agrees with it or not. At the end of the day, every single one of these situations comes down to the same brutal math, a code that's supposed to protect people who are already the most vulnerable to the system, tested against that same system holding years, sometimes decades, of somebody's actual life over their head. Some of these guys cooperated quiet and spent years years arguing about what it even meant. Others said it loud, on the record. No room left to explain it away. Not one of them walked away from it clean. And in this culture specifically, that label follows you around a whole lot longer than most prison sentences do. And if you enjoyed this one, you'll definitely want to check out these videos on your screen next. Have a good one.